It had been an outside kind of day. Katie discovered that if you step in wet sand, your shoe will leave a mark. Orbie learned that if you drop your beads on the ground, it's hard to find them again. And they both found out that cats sometimes like to eat grass. Katie and Orbie were at the playground with their friends, Arthur, Bryn, Phoebe, Satya, and Andy. Shh. They were having a big game of hide and seek. Arthur had already found Katie and Bryn. They were sitting on a rock watching. From where they were sitting, they could see Satya, who was hiding behind the slide. Bryn giggled, and Arthur knew she knew something, but he couldn't see what. Arthur ventured off hunting for his missing friends. Bryn signaled that it was all clear for Satya to run home. Satya peeked out and saw that Arthur wasn't even looking her way. With a little yelp, she raced for home. Now Arthur did hear her, and he turned and ran too. He ran as fast as he could, but Satya got to the rock before him. She was home free. Phoebe had been hiding behind a hedge. When Arthur started to walk away, Phoebe tiptoed toward the rock. Arthur didn't notice her for a minute, but someone giggled and he turned around. He raced for the home rock. Phoebe raced too, but Arthur got there first. She was out. Phoebe sat in the rock with the others. Andy raced up behind Arthur, and before he even knew he was there, Andy touched the base and got home free. Arthur was very surprised. There was only one person left. Even though Orbie was bright pink, he was always hard to find. Arthur looked around. There was no Orbie in sight. Arthur snuck around the playground equipment as his other friends watched. No one could see Orbie. Orbie was lying on the ground by the sandbox. He peeked one eye up over the edge to see where Arthur was. Arthur was walking toward him, but looking the other way. Orbie waited. Soon Arthur came around the sandbox. Orbie didn't move a muscle. As Arthur was looking down, Orbie was leaping up. Arthur was so surprised, he didn't move for a moment. And then he started to run. But Orbie was already partway there. When Orbie got home free, he jumped right up on the rock and did a giant somersault off of it. Arthur was a good sport and told him he did a good job. But when he said this, he called him Orbits. Orbie wasn't too sure he was talking to him, but everybody looked at him, so he smiled. Later that day, when the friends were playing spaceships, Bryn, who was flying the spaceship, told Orbits it was his stop. Orbie got out, but I have to tell you, he was a little sad. Everybody was calling him that name. He looked at Katie, who waved goodbye with a big smile as the spaceship took off again. Katie didn't seem to mind if his friends called him Orbits. Orbie did continue to play, but he was a little sad. It wasn't nice to be called names, and today everybody was doing it. He thought his friends liked him, but now he was beginning to think they didn't. As he and Katie were walking home, he asked if she still liked him. Katie was surprised by the question, but she told him for sure she did. He was her best friend. Orbie was happy again. Until they walked through the front door and Katie said, "Come on, Orbits, I smell spaghetti." Katie raced off for the kitchen, but Orbie slumped right down on the floor. He stayed there until Mom called him for supper. At supper, Dad asked if something was wrong. They had had so much fun in the park, it seemed odd that Orbie was sad about his day. Orbie smiled and tried to be cheery, but he didn't fool Dad. When the dishes were done, Dad asked Orbie to come down to the basement to give him a hand with something. In the basement, Dad sat on an old crate to sort his tools that were getting mixed up, and he looked at Orbie. Orbie looked back, wondering what it was Dad wanted him to do. Dad asked Orbie what was wrong. Orbie didn't know what to say. He didn't want to tell on his friend. Dad told him he could say anything and that would be fine. Orbie explained about Arthur and Bryn, and he tried not to tell Dad about Katie, but Dad guessed. And when Dad heard the whole story, he put his hand on Orbie's shoulder. He told Orbie that he was worrying about whether or not someone liked him when they were showing him that they liked him very, very much. Orbie stood there and he looked at Dad. He didn't understand. Dad explained that Orbits was a nickname. Arthur liked Orbie so much that he had chosen a special name for him. Sometimes nicknames are made up from the original name, like Orbie and Orbits. Sometimes they aren't. Arthur knows that Orbie loves space, so he made up a nickname to do with space. It was Arthur's way of saying how special Orbie was to him. The others liked him and the name so much that they used it too. It doesn't mean they don't like Orbie, it means that they really do. Dad added that Orbie could ask for another name if he didn't like Orbits. Orbie realized that he had wasted time thinking that people didn't like him. They were trying to tell him that they liked him a lot. He smiled and hugged Dad. He didn't want to change the name Orbits at all. It was the name his friends chose. That was good enough for him. And that night, as Katie and Orbie were getting ready for bed, Katie did a really silly dance with her pajamas on the top of her head. She held the legs out and made funny noises. Orbie burbled that she was really a crazy Katie Cats. Katie stopped. No one had ever called her that. She looked at Orbie and smiled. "I certainly am," she said. Ever since that day, sometimes people call Orbie Orbits, and sometimes people call Katie Katie Cats. Both friends love their nicknames. So if your friends ever think up a special nickname for you, you'll know that they must think you're really something. And I, for one, know you certainly are.